What's going on? What's your take today?
Oh, I think we should continue our discussion last time because I believe you cut it short.
Probably. What was the discussion about?
Trump's so-called fraud.
Oh, yeah, you were cutting me off the whole time and weren't listening. I remember.
All right, dinner time.
I think you were just a little upset that you didn't really have rebuttals to my arguments.
No, I did. You kept trying to tell me that I didn't know what I was talking about, but anytime I'd ask you something, you would not know the answer.
No, I would reply and you would kick me.
Okay, we'll see. I'm going to go ahead and mark down all the times that you don't say the answer to the question.
Okay.
Now, what was your complaint?
So, I believe that Trump did not commit fraud in that case because, obviously, as we know, a lot of these properties are actually a lot higher than 18 million. Like Mar-a-Lago. They're worth a lot more than that.
Okay, that's not the argument.
And I don't believe that just because it's not on subdivided land or because it's on historic property means it's worth less. I don't think that's
that's not what that's not the argument at all. Again, this is probably why I ended it short last time. It's not the argument.
What's the argument?
The argument is that Donald Trump knowingly falsified documents to gain financial advantage.
Right. But your claim was that he would inflate his assets when he was going to get a business loan and then deflate them for taxes.
Yes.
Okay. But that's not what he was charged with.
So he was charged with, he wasn't charged with that, but he was sued for that, for fraud.
No.
Yes. He was sued for fraud.
Sued. It had nothing to do with his taxes, though.
What?
He was simply sued for inflating his assets to get business loans.
That's over half of what he was sued for was damages to the taxpayers.
Right. They attempted to try to say that he devalued his assets for taxes.
He did.
But we all know that you're not even the one that decides what you're paying when it comes to taxes.
The problem is that he would do things like a debt parking scheme where he would literally say he owed himself $50 million and then not provide receipts so he could use that to write off on taxes.
What you're saying? So he would park his debt and he would use this to what? Excuse me?
He would have an LLC that he would say he owed $50 million to and then write that down for tax advantage. I owe myself $50 million, therefore I can take a $50 million tax bonus because I wasn't paid this back by myself. That's debt parking. That's not illegal. Even the case. Yes, it is.
The case. the whole case was basically structured about Mar-a-Lago.
No, it was in the case because Donald Trump has a financial monitor, and that financial monitor wrote a report to Engoron in the weeks prior indicating that Donald Trump had a debt parking scheme.
Who said that?
That was the former federal judge and Trump's financial monitor.
Okay, but that has nothing to do with this case.
Yes, it does.
No, it doesn't.
Yes, it does.
This entire case is basically them saying that Trump overvalued his assets to get business loans.
Right.
That's the whole case.
The financial monitor was monitoring how Donald Trump was managing his finances. And one of the things he did was what I just told you.
What does any of what you're saying have to do with Mar-a-Lago being so-called valued at $18 million?
It's not. It's part of a larger case.
It's not. Mm-hmm.
It's part of a larger case of fraud, persistent fraud, and how Donald Trump committed fraud. That's what they were investigating.
Yeah, so they were investigating that Donald Trump committed fraud. And you specifically told me that because Mar-a-Lago was on historic property, that means he can't list it as an asset, is basically what you basically told me.
No.
So what were you telling me?
What I told you is that Donald Trump lied about Mar-a-Lago and its tax status so that he could gain more leverage from the banks. And
did this. Who did he lie to?
He lied to the banks.
And
banks, insurance companies. We went over this all last time and you didn't get it, man.
No, you tried saying that he lied to the banks by saying it was a single-family residence.
He lied to the bank in numerous ways. But basically, he took to the bank and said, this does not have tax restrictions on it. Therefore, it's worth this much money that's comparable to the land in the area. Or actually, he overvalued it, but it was more comparable than it was. And he tried to represent that to the bank.
What does the property... Here's where you're not understanding. Even if the property has tax restrictions on it, what does that have to do with the value of it? Because it's listed as an asset to get a loan. Are you saying that Trump wouldn't qualify for these loans if he listed all of the tax discrepancies?
Am I saying that Trump wouldn't qualify? Yes, that's exactly what the documents are alleging.
So you're alleging that he wouldn't qualify for these loans, knowing damn well
he
that
may
Mar-a-Lago
have qualified.
$700 million.
If he did qualify, okay, he would have owed less, or he would have had to pay more in interest. That's the point.
So you're saying he used his assets and overvalued them so he could pay less in interest, right?
Yes. And
So
when
it's not even about tax.
when you're talking about hundreds of millions or billions of dollars in loans, that few points is a lot of money. Yeah.
Right. But this is the whole problem with your argument. You're saying that because he listed his property, Mar-a-Lago, in a certain way with the taxes and didn't clarify that it was on historic grounds, that somehow it's only going to be valued at 18 million and not 700 million. Or 600 million or 500 million.
So it's not going to be valued at 700 million that he valued it at and represented it to the banks. It may be worth hundreds of millions, but it will not be worth the 600 million. And it's subjective. It's not subjective when you lie on forms.
Well, no. Here's the thing. If the bank didn't want to approve his loan, they would say, okay, well, we're going to get an appraisal on the property. Why didn't they do that?
So there was appraisals on the property done by independent people that Donald Trump had hired. In the case of Deutsche Bank, it does matter because he represented it to them. But in the case of Deutsche Bank, Donald Trump had Kushner's friends working there, and they were the ones writing off the loans. But it doesn't matter, right? It doesn't matter. Like you saying that the bank. So I mean, essentially, you're like saying, well, this person got conned. Okay, but they're responsible too, right? Donald Trump.
Anyone was conned.
I know you don't because you're an ideologue. So Donald Trump committed fraud because he lied on documents. He said the penthouse was 30,000 square feet.
Okay, when you
it was
say
only 10, that's fraud.
And what you keep calling it fraud, but that's not fraud.
That is fraud.
If the bank didn't feel comfortable giving him a loan, no, it does. Hold on.
It is
just
fraud.
He
Listen, it is fraud
on the property. Hold on. Can I explain something to you?
Yes, just because he did not explain the tax
property.
Yes, the restrictions on the property. Yeah, that's fraud.
Bro, if his property was worth $300 million, $400 million, whether there's a tax discrepancy or not on the property, it's still worth that amount. It's being used as an asset. It doesn't. No, he's not pulling a mortgage on the house or the property.
I don't know what you're not getting about this. Okay, Donald Trump blatantly lied. He blatantly lied on documents so that he could get more favorable loans. This is not. I don't understand what the malfunction is here, but this is not a difficult concept. Donald Trump took property he knew there were restrictions on, and he lied about them. And in some instances, it was brazen, like the fact that he said his penthouse was 30-something thousand square feet when it was not.
Was that penthouse finished?
Yes.
Okay, so why didn't the bank order an appraisal to go do their own due diligence? This is
it
what
doesn't
you're not
matter. It doesn't matter for purposes of New York.
Time.
Listen, it does not matter for purposes of New York law. He committed fraud.
No,
you're confusing negligence with criminality, sir.
Hold on.
Yes, the bank was negligent in whatever they didn't do, but you're confusing that with criminality. Donald Trump committed a crime. That is not being
If you're going to try to say that Trump committed fraud and he's the reason why the bank got screwed over, why not say, hey, bank, why don't you do your due diligence like you would with any other loan?
It does. I want you to listen for a second, okay? Donald Trump used his position. He used his leverage and lied to banks. He lied as a metric. He lied as a metric. I don't know how that could remind you of The Big Short.
Because
he lied to the banks as a business model. He committed persistent fraud. And are you really sitting here saying, I want you to think about this, that if someone was going around scamming people, full-blown scamming, full-blown lying to their face on documents, oh, you're going to have these payments, but you have these payments. It is. This is what he did.
No.
If someone went to the bank and said, I have this, I make this much money, and then they went there and said, and then they went there, and then they went there, and then they continued to do it so they could over-leverage themselves.
Do you understand how difficult it is to get a business loan? It's not easy.
It doesn't matter.
If the business goes out of business, it's under like an LLC or an S corp, which means they really can't seize anything. They lose out on all their money. So they have something called collateral. So they'll use Trump's assets as collateral. So if the bank believes that, hey, Mar-a-Lago is worth $300 million, we're going to give Trump a $100 million loan. If he can't pay it back, we're going to take Mar-a-Lago. That's not fraud, brother. No matter how he lists the
is fraud when you lie on documents. Listen, I can read the law to you, man. It is fraud when you lie on documents. Donald Trump did that. And he didn't do it once. He did it for all of his properties for fucking 50 years. He overvalued his properties in almost every instance by 10 to 30 times what its actual value was. And he did that by lying about the property. That is fraud. That is persistent fraud. And you can say that maybe he goes to civil court with the banks and wins. It doesn't matter because the law states that you cannot use fraud as a business practice. Period.
I'll give you No, because this is about loans, not business practices. This is about getting a business loan. It's completely different. I'll give you a real world example.
What
Let's
are you
say
talking? It's not different.
Hold
It's
on.
the law.
Can
What
I give you a
law?
real
Hold
world
on. In
example
what
that
law
actually
did he
happened?
not commit fraud? Do you really think if he went to the fucking courts and was like, yeah, I lied to them about the property and now they want that other interest that I should have owned them, that the court's going to be like, oh, okay. No, Donald Trump lied. He lied.
No, then
he misrepresented
if
what he
that's the case-
had to a criminal degree. I don't know what you're not getting about this.
You're not getting it. You're not getting it.
I'm
I'll give you a real world example. If I have my house and it's paid off and I want to pull out a mortgage on it, I want to get cash out of it, and I tell the bank, "Hey, bank, my house is 10,000 square feet," and when really it's only 5,000, right? I tell them it's 10,000.
Yeah, you committed fraud.
We're $3 million.
Yep,
No,
you
it's
committed
not fraud,
fraud.
'cause guess what the
Yes,
bank is
you
doing?
have
Okay.
committed
It's
fraud.
absolutely fraud, sir.
Yes, that is fraud. Stop.
That's not fraud.
Okay,
I'll-
if you then stop doing mortgages. If you're doing that,
I'll explain to you
did
how
you
it's
just
not fraud.
admit?
That's
It
what the
is
bank's
fraud.
gonna
It
do.
is fraud, and you
Did you
learned
just
that when you
admit
take the
to
NMLS
fraud?
test, sir.
Yeah,
That is in
guess
the
what the
NMLS.
bank does? No, I'm telling you real world examples of my clients, what they'll tell me, right? Guess what the bank
I don't
does?
care what
Orders
they'll
an
tell
appraisal.
you.
Oh,
Polly,
you're
that
lying
is
about
literally
square
in the
footage.
NMLS.
Okay.
So if you're saying
Well,
that,
here,
you're
it's actually
lying.
only worth this much.
Polly, if you're literally saying this and you're saying that that does not go against the NMLS, you're lying because it's part of NMLS.
It's part of NMLS for the bank to accept that. Yes, it'll be fraud against the bank.
It's
not the
considered
borrower.
fraud.
The borrower's
It
protected.
is
with the
specifically
truth of lending.
considered
What are you
fraud,
talking
sir.
about? No, the
It's
borrower's
considered fraud,
protected.
sir.
No, you're
Then
wrong.
you did not take the NMLS.
What's the first question that
Then
a
you're
mortgage
lying.
loan originator asks a client? It's, what do you believe your home is worth?
Stop talking. Let's be so this is from federallawyers.com. Lying on a mortgage application constitutes mortgage fraud under federal law. Mortgage fraud occurs when someone deliberately misrepresents information to obtain mortgage financing they normally would not qualify for. And you can imagine it's the same thing if you sell your fucking house.
Exactly. So what do you think happened in 2008? People were lying about how much money they were.
We do not care.
Wow. That's nuts.
Well,
Bro, I went to school for criminal justice. I read the fucking RCW. Katie's a lawyer. If you're doing that, you're committing fraud. That's a fucking felony. You
And
can't
I
lie.
actually put myself through school doing mortgages for Lending Tree. So
And just
that's
to
how I
be
know
clear,
it's in the NMLS.
Donald Trump got off easy because they could have charged his ass with criminal prosecution on top of civil. And they only went with civil. That's fraud. That's fraud. Okay. It's not like and here's the thing. It's not like you're talking about a little discrepancy, right? You're like, oh, when you put into like fucking Kelly Blue Book, oh, it's in perfect condition. No, that's not what we're talking about. We're not talking about you saying, well, I think my car's worth 30,000 and the Kelly Blue Book says 20. That's not what we're talking about. What we're talking about is somebody blatantly lying on applications, doing it forever and knowing it. That's fraud. You're making material representations that you know are false. It's the definition.